Today on Locked On Penguins, we look back at the season that was for Matt Grzelcyk, as well as give you a rundown ahead of the offseason on the upcoming UFAs and RFAs that the Penguins will be looking at and whether or not they should hold on to them. We'll do that right after this.
You're Locked On Penguins, your daily podcast on the Pittsburgh Penguins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Patrick Damp. You can follow me across all social media platforms at synonym for wet. Joined once again, he has returned by the one and only Hunter Hodes. You can follow him on Twitter at Hunter Hodes. You can give our show's Twitter account a follow at LO_Penguins. And of course, as always, we appreciate you making us part of your daily routine. Don't forget that we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube and the Roku channel. Plus, if you're following us on YouTube, make sure to hit the notification button. That way you can be among the first to know when we drop our daily Monday through Friday episodes. Before we get started, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. More on them later in the show. So, Hunter, welcome back from your quick excursion down to your alma mater to see Enter Sandman played live on the football field. I gotta say, man, I don't have a lot of regrets in my life, but one of them is definitely not going to a Division I school to witness the atmosphere of a football game at a D1 school. I said to you before we hit record, I went to IUP. I'm pretty sure my college football stadium was smaller than my high school football stadium, so didn't really get to experience that. I'm sure that was an out-of-body experience for you.
It was unbelievable. That's probably one of the best nights of my life, if I'm being honest. This has been 25 years in the making for Metallica to come to Virginia Tech and play at Lane Stadium. And a good chunk of the crowd were heavy metal fans. The other half, I would say, were just pure Virginia Tech fans. So I'm lucky that I love both. I love heavy metal music and I love Virginia Tech. And they started with a quick pre-recorded Enter Sandman to kick things off, which got the crowd really juiced up. And then they ended the show with a live version of Enter Sandman. The stadium showed up on the seismograph, so the earth literally shook each time Enter Sandman played. And hey, it's so awesome that we can pack this place like this to hear Enter Sandman. I love Virginia Tech. I always will. And hey, we might have some West Virginia fans that listen to this show. It's a lot better than Country Roads. Isn't it, Pat? Isn't it?
As a purely unbiased observer who has no loyalty to either, I will take Enter Sandman over Country Roads. But I will say, did spend a few years of my life living in West Virginia. And when you get close to closing time at the bar and Country Roads comes on, it's a pretty good time. I won't lie. But we are here to talk hockey. We're not here to talk music or college football. So let's dive into it. We're going to continue our season in review series today. And we're going to do that with defenseman Matt Grzelcyk. I want to begin with this, Hunter. I kind of said this last summer when they signed Grzelcyk. Obviously, we know how this season went. We kind of expected him to be signed in order to be traded at the deadline because he signed a one-year deal. He looked like a perfect candidate to flip for whether it was a young prospect who maybe isn't working out but isn't quite a blue chip, or at the very least draft capital. That did not happen. He stuck with the team through the duration of the season. But what I said last summer was they were also kind of taking a bet on Matt Grzelcyk, that he struggled in his final year with the Boston Bruins to the point where he was actually taken out of the lineup and was a healthy scratch both down the stretch and into the playoffs. But I kind of said that I felt like he could bounce back because you saw his body of work in the lead up to that last season in Boston, and he was pretty much the model of consistency. Wasn't a superstar defenseman, wasn't a top pairing defenseman, but a guy that you could rely on to provide you a little bit, but he would never really be a liability for you. In Pittsburgh, got off to a rough start the first month or so of the season, but I think throughout the rest of the year, he bounced back really well. I thought he was a solid contributor. He obviously stepped in and helped the power play, which, as we know, finished 6th in the NHL in the regular season, which was a massive improvement for the team. So I think on the whole, as a Penguin, Matt Grzelcyk had a pretty solid season, plays all 82 games, 40 points, 1 goal, 39 assists, was really good on the power play. So at the end of the day, for what they paid him for 1 year, I thought it was a solid season for Matt Grzelcyk.
He started out really poorly. I mean, we came on this show end of October into November. Actually, it was right around the Thanksgiving break, man, where he was about to be scratched. He was that bad to start the year. Couldn't defend to save his life. He was contributing a little bit offensively, but he was out to lunch every time he was on the ice in his own zone. But then, thankfully, he stabilized a little bit. They started putting him in advantageous situations, especially on the power play. We jokingly called him a power play merchant, Pat, throughout the year, just because he was doing a good job quarterbacking that top unit, and the Penguins power play was a top 10 unit this year after being one of the worst power plays in the league during the 23-24 season. And, you know, you look at just his counting stats this year, sure, 1 goal, but he did have 40 points, and that is a career high. Before this season, he had never had even 30 points in a season. So the fact that he had 39 assists, that's good. So a nice little bounce back in that department. We'll get to whether they should bring him back in the second segment, because I don't want to spoil my answer. You know, you look at the underlyings this year. He played all 82 games, almost 1,500 minutes of 5-on-5 ice time. He was dead even for shot attempts when he was on the ice. -3 in goals for versus goals against, 47% expected goals for percentage, 48% scoring chances, and then 46 high danger chances. Now, he kind of flip-flopped throughout the year. He played part of the year with Karlsson, played part of the year with Chris Letang. And to be honest, at the start, he was really bad with Karlsson. He stabilized him a little bit. I don't think I would want to see that pairing again for next season, especially if they do bring Grzelcyk back. Again, we'll get into that in a couple of seconds. But to start the year, the underlyings are really bad. They stabilized just a bit down the stretch, but I still don't think he's a top 4 guy anymore. He's probably a bottom pairing defenseman at this point in his career. The reason why he had a career was because the Penguins gave him top 4 minutes. Like when they signed him and Anthony Beauvillier on July 1st of last year, that should have told everyone, yeah, they're not serious about contending for the Stanley Cup, let alone a playoff spot for this past season. Like they played Grzelcyk top 4 minutes all year. I'm sure they looked around to try and trade him. But, you know, sometimes if teams don't want to meet that price, even though these prices were pretty high, like you saw what Brian Dumoulin went for, man, like that was a pretty high price. Maybe a team didn't want to meet the price that Kyle Dubas put on him. So again, I was definitely, I guess, a little disappointed that they didn't move him, but I understood it because they probably didn't get the value that they were looking for. He's a UFA now. I'm sure they'll have talks, but yeah, I'll give this season for him. But kind of going back and forth, maybe a B- just because he started out the year really poor, stabilized a bit down the stretch. Honestly, I'll say C, average. I think he was fine.
I was going to go B-. I think it was, you can't discount how rough the start of the season was for him. It did really get to the point where he looked pretty much unusable.
Yes.
But you compare the way he finished the season to that, it was a really solid bounce back. And you brought up a couple things that I want to build upon here before we have our discussion on what the offseason is going to bring for UFAs and RFAs. First, the power play point of it all. He only had 15 points on the power play. So he really didn't get the bulk of his points on the power play. Just under half of them, because he gets 15, has 40 points in total, and realistically, I also want to come back to the trade aspect of it. Like you said, teams out there probably didn't match the price that Kyle Dubas had in his head. And you bring up the Brian Dumoulin acquisition by the New Jersey Devils. For the Devils, that was, I don't want to say a desperation trade, but given all the injuries they had and everything else, they needed a body. And maybe the Penguins could have found a way to move him to, say, New Jersey for something that they would have liked. But at the end of the day, New Jersey was not the team with any kind of leverage. So you kind of go back and forth of, could they have gotten something more? Could they have talked New Jersey into paying a premium for him? But we'll never know that option. At the end of the day, though, I do think my quote unquote prediction for him going into this season ended up coming to pass, because again, you look at all of his seasons in Boston, save for his last, very consistent, kind of brings you that second or third pairing value as a defenseman. And it was a blip on the radar for him, at least for now, because we don't know what's going to happen over the next however many seasons he plays. But I was a little bit more bullish on him going into the season, if for no other reason. Like we said, it didn't happen, but he was signed to be traded. And part of when you sign a guy like that to trade him, you don't put him on the bottom pairing. You don't put him in the bottom six, unless it's a bottom six forward, obviously. But a defenseman like that, you're going to showcase throughout the year. And as they showcased him, especially post Thanksgiving break, he really showed that he could, at the very least, on a contending team, be a good depth asset. But that obviously never came to pass. So the season is behind us, obviously, and he is a UFA, and that is going to take us into our second segment. When we come back, we're going to talk about the pending UFAs and who is worth holding on to and who is worth letting walk. And we will get into that when we come back. But first, we've got to tell you about today's first sponsor, and that is Indeed. You just realized that your business needs to hire someone yesterday. So how can you find amazing candidates fast? That's easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. Obviously, I've said it plenty of times as we've done the Indeed ad on this show, as long as they've been riding with Locked On Penguins. Never had to use it as someone looking to hire, but I have definitely used it as someone looking for a job, including my current place of employment. It is one of the best out there. I cannot recommend it enough. So now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this very podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, all you need is Indeed. All right, we're back here on the Thursday edition of Locked On Penguins. I'm Patrick Damp, right alongside the one and only Hunter Hodes. So let's just kind of keep the first segment rolling into the second segment. One of the Penguins' first UFAs this offseason is Matt Grzelcyk. I go back and forth on this one because I do think he played quite well to end the year, quite well relatively to what he is. We're not going to pretend like he was a superstar, but if you can kind of try to run back what you did this year with Matt Grzelcyk, 1-year deal, you're obviously going to look to move him sometime in and around the deadline or in the lead up to it, and it's an affordable deal like it was this year. I wouldn't totally be against bringing him back, because if he can continue to show that he has value on the power play and can play second pairing minutes, next year with a rising cap and everything, you could probably get a return for him. But if you're considering more than a year, I will absolutely pass on that. So if they were to bring him back 1-year capacity, sign him to trade him, I'm on board, but it can't be any more than that.
See, I understand what you're saying, but I would just move on, I think, at this point. And Kyle Dubas, I feel like he kind of hinted at that. Like, he was like, yeah, we're going to talk during the offseason here, but he didn't exactly sound like someone who was really eager to sign him to a new deal. The thing with Grzelcyk, you don't need to bring him back. You just need to replace him and get someone who is a bit better at 5-on-5. Like, yeah, he really helped the power play. He was a good quarterback, better last year than Erik Karlsson and Chris Letang. But you can find someone like that, but is also better at 5-on-5 than Grzelcyk was. and hopefully someone who is a bit younger. I would not bring him back just because you have the whole idea of getting younger. And do we really think that Grzelcyk is going to repeat the season that he just had for the Penguins, at least in terms of, counting stats? Again, Pat, 40 points. The highest before this past season was 26, 22, 23 with the Bruins. He played 75 games that year, had 4 goals, 26 points. He had never been over 30 points before this year. I don't think it's a good idea to even sign him to a 1-year deal just based on what he did this past year. I would let someone go overpay him during free agency, sign him to a 2 to 3 year deal, something like that. I think the Penguins are better off finding someone younger and especially better at 5-on-5 than Grzelcyk was. Again, I'm not trying to harp on him or anything like that. He was serviceable this year. I gave him an average grade for the season that he had. But the thing with him is it's all about learning from this experience, but replacing him with someone better, especially at even strength. That's where I would go with this one with Matt Grzelcyk.
Now,
go ahead.
I will say this, in spoiler alert, the majority of this segment is probably going to be focused mainly on Matt Grzelcyk, because when you look down the rest of the UFAs on Penguins list, it's a lot of hard passes. But I hear what you're saying, and for the most part, I agree. I if they were not to re-sign him, I'm not going to come on the show when he signs elsewhere and say it was a failure by Kyle Dubas. But the thing that I would push back on is this. The point you're making about you go find somebody to play the same role, right? Better, a little bit better at 5-on-5, maybe younger, kind of the similar underlying numbers. When you're in a contention window, I agree with that statement. I said that all throughout the 2010s, where Ray Shero, may he rest in peace, Jim Rutherford, you name it, would fall in love with depth players who had a big year, and then they would hand them money at the end of the season and say, you did so well, we're going to keep you, and then they never meet that standard. When you're trying to win the Stanley Cup, that's a fatal mistake. Right now, with the Penguins, they're obviously in transition, retooling, rebuilding, whatever word we're using this week. You can live with 1 year of Matt Grzelcyk again, especially if he comes close, which kind of hovers around his career average of 30-ish, 25, 30-ish points, and then you flip him. You don't re-sign him to keep him. But again, at the end of the day, it's not going to be make or break if they don't bring him back. But I kind of look at it that way, is if they were in the contention window, absolutely. You say, thank you for the 40 points. Thank you for being good on the power play. Go get paid somewhere else. You can't give him more than a year, but if he walks, not going to cry over it.
No, again, I think it's best for both sides if he finds a different opportunity and where he can get, I think, a bit more money and a bit more term instead of just a 1 year kind of prove it deal that he had this past year with the Penguins where he got top 4 minutes. Otherwise, when you look at the UFAs for this year, Matt Nieto, happy trails. I don't think there's any reason for them to re-sign him. That experiment really didn't work out. If I'm Kyle Dubas, I would wish him the best of luck. Bokwe Mama, that one's a bit interesting to me. If they want to bring him back on a 2-way deal for 1 year, I guess it's not the worst thing in the world. He's obviously very popular in the locker room. His thing is, the vibes are off the charts with him, Pat. Like, the vibes, very much there in the locker room, very much there on the ice. I still probably wouldn't want him playing every single game, but even if they let him walk, it's not the end of the world or anything like that. You can find someone who is a better player than him for that role, in my opinion. So that one's still up in the air. If it's up to me, honestly, I'd probably let him walk if I had the say, but I'm obviously not going to be upset if they gave him a 1 year, 2-way deal or something like that. Joona Koppanen, that's whatever to me. If they want to bring him back on a 2-way deal, that's fine too. But if I had to guess right now, I don't think he's coming back. Where I discussed Grzelcyk, you have some of the other UFAs. I think that's actually it, unless I have my notes wrong, Pat.
No, that's pretty much it. And I'm in the same headspace as you when it comes to Imama. If it's a 1 or 2 year, 2-way deal, not going to be too upset about it. He, like you said, great vibes guy, great story too, because definitely somebody who has worked their butt off to become a professional hockey player. And again, the theme is going to continue to be, this is a team in transition. So you can burn a couple spots on good vibes guys or projects or however you want to classify them. And listen, you still have to put an entertaining product on the ice to an extent. And listen, we're not going to have the discussion about physicality and fighting and all of that today because it's just not the day. But we all do enjoy when the gloves get dropped and the DJ in the arena hits the ring bell when there's a fight on the ice. And there's really nobody in the Penguins organization other than a mama who does that. And every now and then, seeing him work hard, seeing him throw some hits, seeing him drop the gloves every now and then makes for an entertaining product. He's a popular guy in the locker room. They want to bring him back. Not going to be too upset about it, but it can't, and it would never be anything more than 2 years max in a two-way deal where he can bounce back and forth between Wilkes-Barre and the Penguins. So we're going to leave the second segment here because the RFA list, little bit more interesting when you look at that one. And we want to make sure we reserve a good amount of time to talk about the RFAs the Penguins will be facing this summer. We will do that when we come back right after this. But first, our last sponsor of the day, and that is Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's pretty easy to lose track, and that is where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO gives you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money, it's more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. The all-in-one convenience, that is the best part of Monarch Money. Instead of juggling your online banking apps, your investment apps, and anything else you might use to keep control of your finances, it's a one-stop shop for you. It's all right there in the Monarch Money app. So take control of your finances today with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, welcome back to the Thursday edition of Locked On Penguins. I'm Patrick Damp, right alongside Hunter Hodes. And we got to take some time here, Hunter, to dive in to the Penguins list of RFAs, because while there's only a handful, quite a few of them could be crucial for the Penguins moving forward. Let's start with one of the biggest names, a player you and I have been a big fan of since he became a Penguin, and that is Philip Tomasino. Started off very hot with the Penguins, played extremely well after coming over to the Penguins from the Nashville Predators. 11 goals, 23 points over 50 games. They're kind of projecting, when you look at a lot of the projections, about 1.5 million to bring him back. And he really seemed to struggle down the stretch, but that was more a factor of Ville Koivunen and Rutger McGroarty coming up. He gets bumped out of the top six. I absolutely think you bring Philip Tomasino back. I think there's a lot of potential there. Once he finds consistency, he can be a very good middle six contributor for the Penguins. Still very young, a lot of hockey ahead of him, very smart player. What say you?
Yeah, that's the thing. If he can just find a little bit more consistency, this is a player who could definitely score 15 to 20 goals during a season. There'd be times this year where it looked like he was all in. There were other times where you could tell he was a little bit of a step slow. And again, I think that comes with a little bit more maturity, a little bit more consistency. And once he finds those two things for a full 82 game season, I think he's going to be totally fine. I would bring him back on probably a bridge contract, 2 years. I don't think it's going to really cost too much, to be completely honest with you. That's a no-brainer for me if I'm Kyle Dubas in the front office. That's someone who you got from Nashville. He played really well to start, had some ups and downs the rest of the way, but I still bring him back and very much play him in a top 9 role for the entire 2025-2026 season, whether it's on Evgeny Malkin's wing, whether it's on the third line, whatever it is. He needs to play in the top 9 next year. So yes, I 1,000,000% bring him back. There's no reason not to. Connor Dewar, why not? Honestly, he's a feisty little fella. I liked his game enough down the stretch to the point where I would probably sign him to probably a 1-year deal, see what he can do for a full season. If, he shows that same tenacity, especially on the forecheck, and he, improves his scoring touch a little bit, that's someone that you can extend again after that season. But I think for him, another 1-year prove-it deal. Like, I think you saw enough after the trade deadline to be like, okay, let's take a flyer on him for this next season. And if he does well again, okay, then maybe we can look at a multi-year thing for Connor Dewar. But at the very least, for me, in my opinion, I would bring him back on a 1-year contract. I don't think he's going to cost that much either. Connor Timmins, absolutely. That's a very easy one for me too. Very much a Ben Lovejoy type guy. You can play him on the third pairing. Should be a very easy decision to re-sign him for next season and beyond. I think also that's probably looking like a bridge contract too, probably 2 years, maybe 3 if they want to go that far, but I don't think it's going to be a 5 to 6 year term or anything like that. P.O. Joseph, happy trails, honestly, really struggled down the stretch. He was obviously he was hurt for a lot of that time, but even before he got hurt, he just really wasn't playing that well after coming back from the Blues. So I would move on if I am Kyle Dubas in the front office. And then Vasily Ponomarev, absolutely. I would sign him to at least a 1 or 2 year deal. It's probably going to be a 2-way contract just because of the situation, but he'll very much have an opportunity to make the team via training camp. And I'm excited to see what he can do because I like the last couple of games that he played towards the end of the season. Other names, Emil Benstrom, if they want to do a 1-year, 2-way deal, sure. Like he was really good in Wilkes-Barre this year. Then Taylor Gauthier. The goaltending situation is very jammed right now, so they'll have to make a pretty big decision about that. He's an RFA too. They have Murashov, who's going to probably take some minutes in Wilkes-Barre next season. They have Blomqvist, obviously, Philip Larson. That one can go either way, if I'm being honest, because they have a lot of decisions to make there. But those are just my thoughts on some of the other RFAs.
Yeah, not to go full point counterpoint here where I just run down the list like you did and respond, but that's kind of what I'm going to do here. Is the first one I want to start with is Connor Dewar. I look at Connor Dewar, and on the whole, I agree that he is something the Penguins have sorely lacked. Great on the forecheck, plays really hard. I thought he was great, relatively, obviously, when he came over at the trade deadline. But you look at this Penguins roster and who is still under contract going into next year, they're pretty well set in the bottom 6. And we'll obviously see who they move on from this summer, because I do think we are going to see some moves by Kyle Dubas in the trade market, either right before the opening of free agency or right after it. So I do think they want to hold on to him. They probably should. But you look at who's on the team right now, and there's a lot of bottom 6 forwards. And I would like him to take the place of at least one of them because he's younger, has a little bit more potential, and he could be part of the solution once this team eventually rounds the corner. Connor Timmins, same deal. Young defenseman, played well. He's got potential. Obviously, he's not going to become a superstar, but definitely a good depth defenseman that you can plug in on your bottom pairing. And in the case of injury, would not be the worst player to have on a second pair if for a short amount of time, if somebody's out. P.O. Joseph, we tried. Unfortunately, it's just not going to work. Ponomarev, no-brainer. Have to bring him back. A lot of potential there. The most interesting one to me, though, is Gauthier, because we know how jammed up, like you said, the goaltending is in this pipeline. And you got to figure a player like Gauthier, who has done really well the last 2 years, I don't think this is going to be so much a Penguins decision as it is a Gauthier decision, because he looks like a guy who in a different organization could rise up their depth chart and their organizational depth chart, because he's played really well, but I'm not going to place him above Blomqvist or Murashov. I think both of those guys have NHL potential and could realistically take a starting job sometime in the next 2 to 3 years. Probably not the same to be said for Gauthier in this system. I think he does have a higher ceiling than most would expect, but he probably wouldn't reach it here. So I do think when you look at Kyle Dubas's career and his body of work, he usually does right by players. And if you're looking at Taylor Gautier, you probably want him to go somewhere else and get that opportunity.
Yeah, I could see them doing that just because obviously of what we've been talking about, how jam-packed this pipeline is right now. And, I don't know if it would be fully fair to him to start in Wheeling once again, even though he's been great in the ECHL these past couple of years. I do think if they make the decision to not bring him back, there will be multiple teams out there interested in making him their number one for their AHL team, because I do think he is ready for that opportunity in the AHL. I think he has shown that he's I think better than the ECHL right now. Excuse me. I mean, he's been dynamite down there these last couple of years. We also saw Sergei Murashov is better than the ECHL right now and probably deserves to be in the AHL full time for next season. I mean, he was ready for the AHL once he got called up. I mean, he had obviously that outstanding winning streak, played in the playoffs a little bit, played for Wheeling in the playoffs as well. But I do think, again, if they decide not to bring Gautier back, he will be scooped up fairly quickly by a team that could use a number one or even a number two in their farm system for their AHL team, because I think he is more than ready for that opportunity.
I can't really add much more to that. I've loved his play the last couple years. And it's funny. You look at where the Penguins organization is at this moment, and you wouldn't expect goalie to be the most stacked pipeline, but it really is. It is a complete logjam away from the NHL. So once they can figure out how to get away from Tristan Jarry, how to move on from Alex Nedeljkovic in the next year or two, the future is very bright in net. And I say it all the time, whether it's rebuilding or retooling teams, usually the hardest position to figure out when you want to take that next step is goalie. A lot of teams really struggle to find that guy. And obviously, Blomqvist, Murashov, they might not pan out, but I think the chances are a lot higher that they do than they don't. So that puts them in a really advantageous situation as they navigate through this retool, rebuild, transition, whatever we're calling it. But going to be a very interesting summer, Hunter, because a lot of decisions to be made, whether it's the draft, whether it's who's going to be the coach, whether it's who they're going to trade, who they're going to sign. So make sure that you are sticking with us here on Locked On Penguins. But that is going to do it for today's episode. We will be back with a brand new episode for you on Friday. We will likely continue our season in review series and catch you up on any news we may have missed or that may happen between now and then. So for Hunter Hodes, I'm Patrick Damp. Thank you as always for tuning in. We will be back on Friday.